we know that Donald Trump is coming on a big, all bells and whistles state visit to the UK in September, meeting the King and the Queen, and what a complex moment that is going to be for the British government and all the policing and security and demonstrations which will happen around that. But as you said, George, he's coming on a private visit, first of all, to visit a couple of his golf courses. Of course, it still costs just as much in terms of the limousines and the security and the policing, and lots of talk about whether there might be demonstrations as well. But this is not a public or state visit. However, Keir Starmer's had the call. He's been invited up to have a word with Donald Trump. It is amazing the extent to which Donald Trump, as president, continues to prosecute his own commercial and business agenda, whether that is having dinners in the White House to raise money for his own crypto coin, or lobbying as he travels around the world governments to give him planning permission for a new golf course here or whatever. However, put that to one side. Keir Starmer has had the call. And it is interesting, isn't it, that 9 months on from the presidential election, 6 months on from inauguration, Keir Starmer is still managing to sustain that effective working relationship with Donald Trump. It's quite an achievement. I'm not sure if I fully understand it. It might just be Donald Trump's pro British views and an enjoyment of UK pomp and circumstance, and also his commercial interest with his golf courses. But I think there must be also something about the way in which Keir Starmer has handled this. Kind of interesting question. At what point can Keir Starmer to sort of try to cash that in? At what point can he say, whether it's UK tariffs or whether it is the way that Donald Trump engages with the Middle East and Israel, that Keir Starmer can show he has some influence which comes out of that effective relationship. But you'd have to say that so far it's been a very effective piece of diplomacy.
So if he was Donald Trump, he would ask for a free membership of Turnberry for life, wouldn't he? What he wants is a return for having to fly up there and see the president.
I think Donald Trump offered him a game of golf, and Keir Starmer said no. Isn't that right?
Yeah, well, if I was Keir Starmer, I would also say no, because presumably Keir Starmer is either can't play golf or is certainly not as good as Trump. Although there's a very good book which is all about how Trump cheats at golf, which is by kind of moving the ball a bit and whatever. But even despite that, I think he is a pretty good player.
I wonder if they're going to have some tough discussions though about the UK-US relationship, because we've seen in the last week, we were talking last week on the podcast about kind of Epstein and all of the huge complexity that Trump has been dealing with. And he has been trying to divert attention with his security advisor, Tulsi Gabbard, onto, kind of other issues. And they've been accusing former President Barack Obama of being involved in a conspiracy to deny Trump his rightful position as president back in 2016 by winding up the FBI and security agencies to look at the way in which links with Russia to win the election were being managed. But Obama's had to issue a statement saying that this is all nonsense. This was after Donald Trump had bizarrely posted on social media pictures of Barack Obama being arrested in the Oval Office and then in an orange suit incarcerated. I mean, these are all AI invented images, but Donald Trump, the president, is posting them on his own social media account. But of course, there is a question.
Do you know who Jake Angeli Chansley is?
No.
He's the shaman man, the man with the big buffalo horned head dress that stormed the Congress on the 6th of January back in 2020. And the reason I bring him up is that he has tweeted, "F you, Donald Trump," over Epstein. So even, and he was pardoned by Donald. He was actually serving many, many years in prison for his role in the Capitol riots. And he got a personal presidential pardon. It's just to say that it's the issue we were talking about last week with Epstein. The MAGA base is definitely fraying. And Donald Trump is, I think, trying various things to divert attention.
But the point I was going to get to, which you sort of slightly interrupted me on, just as I was getting to my denouement, is that this issue about security agencies destabilising Trump with Obama, this would presumably include British security agencies as well. Is this a conversation that Donald has with Keir Starmer when he is over? I mean, we know that that would have been closely monitored and coordinated, and back in 2016, I think the British agencies concluded at the time the Russians were trying to do this and failed. But does this become a problem in the Starmer-Trump relationship?
I don't think it does. Do you remember there was also that former MI6 agent who was sort of dragged into the kind of row?
Christopher Steele.
Prepared a dossier on Trump for his political opponents. I don't think any of this matters. I think what matters to us is the economic relationship, because I don't actually think Trump is going to listen to Starmer on Gaza, sadly. But if what's significant in the last week is that Trump has announced new trade deals with Japan and Indonesia. So following on from the UK, he says he's going to refine the trade deal with the UK while he's talking to Starmer up in Scotland, which hopefully is a good thing rather than a bad thing. But we should just
let's be clear, the trade deal is bad. It's just not as bad as it might have been. It is still the case that the new Trump trade deal imposes big tariffs on the UK for our exports to America.
Yeah, but I still think Starmer can say yes, but they are lower than the tariffs, for example, that Japan and Indonesia have just agreed to, although they are countries with a trade surplus with America, whereas we have a trade deficit. And of course, they're a lot better.
As you know, George, the counterfactual is always dangerous in politics. Growth is weak in Britain, but it would be even weaker if we hadn't agreed this not so bad trade deal compared to what it might have been. In the end, if growth is weak, growth is weak.
Yeah, but I think a lot of European Union negotiators who were very sniffy about Britain signing up to the American deal, saying it was a very bad deal and that they wouldn't sign up to such a bad deal, I think now in Paris or Berlin, they would jump at the deal that Britain agreed to. They're digging themselves into a hole when everyone else is settling. But we should just conclude by focusing on this thing that Trump is doing in terms of his relationship with the Federal Reserve and his row with the chairman of the Fed, Jerome Powell, who he himself appointed back in his first term as president, because that potentially has a much bigger impact because it impacts things like the bond market and global views of US inflation. It could have a much bigger impact than even these tariff rows and deals, let alone all this stuff about Epstein and kind of conspiracy theories. And Donald Trump has taken the absolutely extraordinary step of essentially undertaking an unannounced visit to the Federal Reserve in Washington. This was supposed to be, I think, a visit from sort of mid-ranking administration officials. And he suddenly said, no, I'm coming instead. And we don't know it's happening today, isn't it, while we record this podcast. But, the last time the markets had a real wobble was when it looked like Donald Trump was going to fire Powell a couple of months ago.
I think this fits in the same category as his bizarre Obama tweets. He needs things to do to divert attention from this, as you say, deepening Epstein row. He needs to throw meat in the direction of the MAGA conspiracy theorists. And one of the things that they hate is the Federal Reserve, because it's all at the centre of an establishment network to undermine the dollar and to try and control the economy. And so him turning up and throwing his weight around and allowing this kind of rolling speculation that he's putting the Fed and under pressure. I mean, it's all of a piece. Are the markets reacting badly today and all over the place? No. Do they think that this is Donald Trump's move? I think they think that Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has been quite clever at sort of allowing Trump to lean in a little bit, but not go wild. I think this looks like more sort of slightly bullying, throw your weight around. Even if he moved against Jay Powell, there's still, a majority in the Federal Reserve Board for sensible policies. The kind of people who have been talked about who might replace Jay Powell are not kind of wild men. If he was going to appoint some crazed ideologue, that would be different. That's not what is being talked about. But I would be surprised. I think the reveal preference of Trump is to have a lot of noise. But when it comes to the economy, as opposed to kind of legal cultural wars on the economy, to be cautious and a bit more risk averse. And so we'll see. I might be wrong. And if something comes out over the course of the day which suggests he's actually going to do something more drastic, then markets will be destabilized and I will kind of eat my England ponytail. But I would be surprised. I think this is another end of July Trump diversion to trying to shift the agenda away from Epstein.
Well, we will see. By the way, the Federal Reserve has got itself into a bit of a mess domestically because it's undertaking a $2.5 billion renovation of its building, which is giving Donald Trump a good club to beat them around the head of. But you're right that if he really moves against Powell or fires Powell, then I think you'll see markets react. But what will probably be one of the biggest events of the autumn will be the appointment of Powell's successor. And
That's right.
Of course, cover that on this podcast.